Blackfeet, a misnomer covering many tribes. Extinct or are they? What does it mean when an American Indian tribe is called extinct? They no longer exist as a distinct community with recognized culture, language, or land. What are some common reasons tribes became extinct? Disease, war, forced removal, assimilation, intermixing, classification, and loss of land. What were captured and enslaved Indians classified as? Black, Negro, Mulatto, and African. Blackfeet, a misnomer covering many tribes. Catawba, Saponi, PD, Yadkin, Chiraw, Yamasee, Monacan, Tetillo. Why Blackfeet? They were called Blackfeet because outsiders didn't know or didn't respect their real tribal names, so they used a generic nickname. Over time, some Native families used the nickname as a way to avoid discrimination or legal trouble when saying their real tribe could be dangerous or wasn't recognized by the government. Using a generic or safer Indian name like Blackfoot/Blackfeet could help families stay out of legal trouble, avoid being forced into Black colored racial categories, avoid removal policies, and keep some Native identity without provoking the state. The Catawba, Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast. Esau, Issa, Iswa, meaning river, also known as Totiri, Jodrikroon, Totilo, Yasan, Yasa, Yasang, Yasan, from the Algonquin variant of the name that the Iroquois used for all Virginia's Siouan tribes, Jodrikong, Catawba, Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast. At any rate, when South Carolina first began to be settled, the Catawba Nation was one of the most powerful and warlike tribes in the South. By right of savage manhood, they controlled large territories in the two Carolinas, and in their strength, they could successfully hold their ground against such formidable invaders as the Iroquois. While from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, women trembled at the name Haudenosaunee, and the bravest warriors dreaded this foe. The Catawbas were not afraid to make expeditions even into the Iroquois country. Lawson, who visited the tribe in 1701, speaks of them as a powerful nation, and he tells us that their villages were very thick. Adair states that one of their cleared fields extended 7 miles, and a later writer says that at this time the tribe perhaps numbered 10,000 souls. The customs and religious rites of the Catawbas were mostly like those of other Indians. Some of both of these, however, seem to have been more or less peculiar to themselves. Schoolcraft mentions that a branch of this tribe, which at one time lived near the mouth of Santee River, had a practice of binding the heads of their children so as to make their foreheads flat and their eyes protrude, which they claimed made them better hunters. It might be mentioned here, incidentally, that no trace of this practice or any of its hereditary effects can be found among them now. To darken their skin, they oiled their bodies and then exposed them to the sun. Like other tribes, the Catawbas practiced the habit of plucking the beard. They used the comb set of rattlesnake teeth to scrape the affected part before applying medicine in cases of lameness, and scratching the shoulder of a stranger at parting was regarded by them as a very great compliment. Catawba, incorporating several small tribes. In 1600, 4,000 in population. 1682, 1,500 to 4,600 souls. 1701, 10,000 souls. 1728, 400 warriors, 1,500 souls. 1743, under 400. 1755, 240 warriors. 1761, 300 warriors, total population 1,000. 1775, 400. 1780, 490. 1784, 250. The first U.S. Census was in 1790. Categories were free white persons, all other free persons, and slaves. This is an example of how tribes decreased. After years of war and Indians being captured and enslaved, many tribes combined to fight extinction, with many tribes becoming extinct and their members misclassified as slaves, blacks, and Negroes. The Saponi, Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast. Shallow water, shallow tree. Siouan term Sapa meaning black. The Saponi, Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast. This is evidently a contraction of Mana Suka Pano, the name of and tribe located by John Smith in the Monacan country at a place identified by Bushnell as on the banks of the Rivanna, directly north of the site of the University of Virginia and about 1/2 mile up the river from the bridge of the Southern Railway. Some time afterward, probably due to the pressure of peoples toward the north, they left this place and settled on a creek usually identified with Otter River and northern tributary of the Roanoke in present Campbell County, Virginia. Here they were visited by John Lederer in 1670 and Thomas Batts in 1671. From this place, they moved again to an island in Roanoke River, just below the junction of the Stoughton and Dan, and still later to Yadkin River, near the present Salisbury, North Carolina, where Lawson found them in 1701. They were accompanied during much of this time by the Tutelo, and before 1711 moved toward the Virginia settlements, uniting on the way with the Occaneechi and crossing back over the Roanoke. Their settlement, called Sapona Towns, was a short distance east of Roanoke River and 15 miles west of the present Windsor, Bertie County, North Carolina. In 1714, along with other allied tribes, they were placed by Governor Spotswood close to Fort Christiana near the present Gainesville, Virginia. In 1722, peace was made at Albany between the northern and southern Indians, and about 1740, part of the Saponi and Tupelo moved north, stopping for and time at Shamokin, Philadelphia. In 1753, this tribe and the Tupelo were formally adopted by the Cayuga, and in 1765, they were living about Sayre, Philadelphia, where part remained until 1778, though in 1771, the principal portion had their village in the Cayuga Territory about 2 miles west of the present Ithaca, New York. In 1789, and remnant of the tribe was still living with the incorporated with the Tutelo and are no longer distinguished as a separate tribe. One band of Saponi remained in the South, however, in Granville County, North Carolina, where they were reported in 1755 and are perhaps still represented by a body of Croatian Indians in Person County, which was cut from Granville. The Saponi. In 1709, the Tutelo, Saponi, Occaneechi, Cayuga, and Shakori had 750 souls. In 1716, Huguenot Fontaine reported, including the Saponi, Manahoac, and Tutelo, 200 Indians. In 1755, the Southern Saponi Band had 14 men, 14 women, children not being separately enumerated. In 1765, Northern Saponi among the Cayuga, 30 warriors. The first U.S. Census was in 1790. Categories were free white persons, all other free persons, and slaves. This is an example of how tribes decreased after years of war and Indians being captured and enslaved. Many tribes combined to fight extinction, with many tribes becoming extinct and their members reclassified as slaves, Blacks, and Negroes.
The PD, Blackfeet Tribes of the Southeast. Origin unknown, but Spec 1935 suggests that it is from the Catawba word piri, something good, or pihir, smart, expert, capable. The PD, Blackfeet Tribes of the Southeast. A tribe found living on the river PD in the present state of South Carolina when Charleston was founded. A map of 1715 locates the PD town on the east bank near the present Cheraw. In 1717, representatives of this town and several other small tribes went to Charleston to renew their old friendship. In 1744, along with some Natchez Indians, they killed 7 Catawba and in consequence fled south to be near the white settlements, where some of them remained as late as 1758. In 1752, however, the Catawba asked Governor Glenn to advise the PD to join them, and this invitation was accepted by part of the tribe, but others remained near the whites. A South Carolina document of 1808 states that within the memory of persons living there were 30 Indians of the PD and Cape Fear tribes forming one settlement under a chief called King Johnny, and that in 1808 only one half-bred woman was left. Some may be represented among the so-called Croatian Indians. Population, Mooney estimates 600 and 1600, and census 1715 does not list them. The Monacan, Blackfeet Tribes of the Southeast, aka Manskin, their territory on the Pamunkey River was also called Manskin. The Monacan, Blackfeet Tribes of the Southeast, a tribe or confederation of small tribes on James River, Virginia, between the falls and the mouth of Rivanna. The name being often extended to include the Saponi and Tutelo on their higher reaches of the two rivers. They were first noted by the Virginia colonists in 1607. In the following year, Captain Newport visited 2 of their towns. The village nearest the falls was known as Mauhimcho and is the one to which the term Monacan is usually applied. By 1670, it is probable that the people of the 2 other settlements, Massanucket and Rassawek, had concentrated here. In 1699, part of the area was occupied by Huguenots, but a Monacan town continued in the neighborhood and is mentioned by the Swiss traveler Michael in 1702. Their name does not appear in the list of tribes stationed at Fort Christiana, but there is little reason to doubt that they joined those Indians when they moved to New York and established themselves among the Iroquois. Population. In 1669, they had 30 bowmen and about 100 souls. Mooney estimates 1,500 in the year 1600, including the Tutelo and Saponi. Tutelo, Blackfeet Tribes of the Southeast. Totero, Totroi, Tutera, Yasan, Yasa, Yasang, Yasa, Yasang. Tutelo, Blackfeet Tribes of the Southeast. This name was applied by the Iroquois to the Siouan tribes of Virginia generally, and it is perhaps in this sense that we are to understand the tribe which appears under it in a map of New Netherlands dated 1614. They are located far down the Susquehanna River. It was given specifically, however, to a tribe visited by Batts and Fallum in 1671 near the site of Salem, Virginia, and it was from them, evidently, that the Big Sandy was called the River of Tutelo in the 18th century maps. But by that time, the tribe itself had removed to an island in Roanoke River near the junction of the Stoughton and Dan. In 1701, Lawson learned that they were near the headwaters of the Yadkin. Sometime afterward, they moved eastward along the Saponi, Occoneechee, Coyote, and Chakori and crossed the Roanoke, and in 1714, the Tutelo, Saponi, Occoneechee, and Stuckanox or Stegraki, which included the remains of the Manahoac, were settled at Fort Christiana on the Meherrin River, the other tribes gravitating toward the south. After peace was finally made between the Iroquois and the Virginia tribes in 1722, the Saponi and Totello moved northward, though not for some years, and before 1744 settled at Shamokin, Philadelphia under Iroquois protection. In 1748, they had moved to a town called Skogari on the north branch of the Susquehanna in the present Columbia County, Philadelphia. In 1758, they were formally adopted into the League of the Iroquois. In 1771, however, they were settled on the east side of Cayuga Inlet, about 8 miles from the south end of Cayuga Lake, in a town called Corrigono. This was destroyed by Sullivan in 1779. A part of them were located for several years near Buffalo, New York. Nikonha, from whom Horatio Hale collected linguistic material proving the Siouan relationship of the tribe, the last of the full-blood Totello died in 1871. The last man who could speak the language fluently was John Key of Costango, who passed away in 1898. The Totello in 1600 reported the Saponi, Manahoac, and the Monacan at 2,700 population. 1678, the Totello, Saponi, Natakoki, Kaunoi tribes, the Occaneechi, Manahoac, and Monocan, had 200 fighting men. In 1709, the Totello, Saponi, Occaneechi, Kiowa, and Manahoac and Monacan and Chakori had 750 souls. In 1715, the Totello, Saponi, Occaneechi, Kiowa, and Manahoac, Monacan, and Chakori had 300 in population. The first U.S. census was in 1790. Categories were free white persons, all other free persons, and slaves. This is an example of how tribes decreased after years of war and Indians being captured and enslaved. Many tribes combined to fight extinction, with many tribes becoming extinct and their members misclassified as slaves, blacks, and Negroes. The Shara, Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast. Sarah, Sarah, Sura, Shara, Sharos, Shara, Sharaz, Sharaz, Chara, Jora, Joada, called by the Spaniards Jula, Jula, Jora, Jora, Z, and J being equivalent to English sh. Originally known as the Sarah, they became known by their name of one of their villages, Shara, after the Yamasee War of 1715 to 1717. Shara, Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast. A Siouan tribe first visited by the Spaniards under De Soto when living in a town in the northwestern corner of what is now the state of South Carolina, close to Chattahoochee Ridge and probably at Towns Hill. It was visited by the Spanish captain Juan Pardo in 1566, who built a fort there named Fort San Juan, in which he left his lieutenant Boyano with some soldiers. Boyano afterward took part of this force to Chia on the Tennessee River, and when Pardo reached the Chirraw town in 1567 from Santa Elena, he found that the garrison Boyano had left there was besieged by the Indians. The latter submitted, however, on his arrival. Sometime after Pardo returned to Santa Elena, his garrison and the others at Chia, Cowiche, and Guattari were destroyed by the natives, and we hear nothing more from Spanish sources regarding the people. Later, they appear to have settled somewhere east of Asheville, where Swanoa Gap preserves their name. In 1670, John Lederer seems to have found this tribe, or it had been reported to him, still farther toward the east, perhaps on Yadkin River, and in 1673, they are placed by Wood between the Cape Fear and the Yadkin. They may have been pressed toward the east by the Cherokee. In 1700, they settled on the River Dan near the southern boundary of Virginia, and probably at a later date established a second village 30 miles above the south side of Dan and between it and Town Fork. This was called the Upper Sora Village, and the other the Lower Sora Village. Iroquois attacks induced them about 1710 to leave the Dan and move southeast to join the Cogawi, and later they came to live on the Pedee River in what was subsequently known as the Cheraw District. Here they became involved in a war with the South Carolina settlers, who laid most of the disturbances among the Indians on this frontier to their charge. At last, between 1726 and 1739, they settled near the Catawba. In 1759, a party of Cheraw under the chief King Johnny joined the English in their expedition against Fort Dusness. They are again mentioned in 1768, and ultimately part of them probably united with the Catawba and became wholly merged with them through a part are undoubtedly represented among the Siouan Indians of Lumber River. The Cheraw. In 1600, Swanson reported 1,000 in population. In 1715, Cheraw, including Kauai tribe and perhaps some others, 510. In 1768, living with the Catawba, 50 or 60. The first U.S. census was in 1790. Categories were free white persons, all other free persons, and slaves. This is an example of how tribes decreased after years of war and Indians being captured and enslaved. Many tribes combined to fight extinction, with many tribes becoming extinct and their members misclassified as slaves, blacks, and Negroes. The Yadkin. Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast. Adkin, Yadkin. Big tree or place of big trees. The Yadkin, Blackfeet tribes of the Southeast, a tribe on the river of the same name, which first appears in history in and letter by the Indian trader Abraham Wood, narrating the adventures of two men, James Needham and Gabriel Arthur, whom he had sent on an exploring expedition to the west. They passed through this tribe in town, which they called Yadkin, in the summer of 1674. Lawson, 1709, gives the name as Redkin, but applies it to the river, and there is no later mention of the people. They may have been identified with the Cheraw, Keawe, or some other Siouan tribe, which appears later under the name Yadkin, population unknown.